Please support Isha Foundation and Sadhguru work to save soil, education and uplifting Dharma by buying the book in full on Amazon. The mind is your business. Sadhguru. Introduction. The mind seems to be a rather dynamic entity. Its mysterious workings have cast a spell on scientists, spiritual seekers, and even poets and novelists. Mark Twain once jested, "I must have a prodigious amount of mind, it takes me as much as a week sometimes to make it up." Though we freely use such terms as "never mind" and "mind you," most of us still have a rather ambiguous idea of what the mind really is. Poets, psychiatrists, and philosophers have each given their own take on the subject, often contradicting one another. And of course, the cliché mind, body and spirit finds mention in bookstores and spiritual expos all around the world. However, for most people, the question is less about what the mind is, and more about what type of influence it has on our daily experience of life. Most of us experience the mind as a continuous and seemingly unstoppable train of thoughts running through our heads. Behind this incessant flow lies a sophisticated web of likes, dislikes, attitudes, habits, inhibitions, morals, and so on and so forth, ad infinitum. This often unconscious patchwork determines how we interact and relate to the world around us, giving shape to our joys, griefs, pleasures, and fears. Few indeed have the perception and depth to see the enigmatic strings which bind this mind into a seemingly solid structure. Fewer are those who find ways to articulate it. In Mind is Your Business, Sadhguru brings clarity to the conundrum, exploring the possibilities and the pitfalls of the mind, and how it can be cultivated for inner peace, joy, and effectiveness. Compiled from a variety of discourses, this volume weaves together questions posed by seekers over the years, from the probing inquiries of hardened skeptics to the exasperated pleas of ardent seekers. The questions are diverse, the answers multi-faceted. Addressing the questioner's innate urge to know, Sadhguru answers more than the question posed, he clarifies even the underlying questions that remain unvoiced. The following pages, laden with Sadhguru's inimitable wit and humor, are a voyage of discovery. Demolishing overused clichés and misconceptions about one's ability to control the mind and have pure thoughts, Sadhguru goes beyond morality and impractical advice to lay bare the deceptive drama of the mind. He calls the mind a circus, one that can render you to the depths of hell within yourself, but that can also take you to great heights. Meditation, he explains, is not only a powerful device to harness the immense capabilities of the mind, which are left untapped by a majority of human beings, but to access the mystical dimensions of life that are entirely beyond the mind's purview. The whole process of yoga, Sadhguru says, is to give one the ability to use the mind as a tool for one's well-being and liberation. It is this shift, from being a slave to the mind to having the mastery to use it at will, which this book seeks to offer. Chapter 1. The circus of the mind. Only if you are out of the circus of your mind, you will be 100% free of madness. Why do we refer to the mind as a circus? A circus is not a mess. A circus is a very coordinated activity deliberately made to look like a mess. On one level it is a mess, but on another, it is a highly coordinated activity. If you look at the way neurons are firing in the brain and what is happening, there is a tremendous sense of cohesiveness in this activity. It is that cohesiveness which is translating into the functioning of the body. A billion things are happening in this body right now simply because there is an extremely well-coordinated play and dance of neurons in the brain. But unfortunately, in most people's experience, the mind has become a mess. It is like a circus, and both aspects of a circus are there. Even the clown in the circus is a highly coordinated gymnast. The outer expression may be that of a clown, but he is extremely talented and balanced in his activity. That is the experience of most people when it comes to their mental activity. What is the possibility of this circus? This circus can take you to great heights. This circus can also render you to the depths of hell within yourself. Both these possibilities are very alive for every one of us right now. The whole thing is a question of how we conduct this circus and how much of it we take charge of. Why is it that for one person the mind seems to be a pleasant experience, while, for another person the mind seems to be a torture device. Why is it that the mind, which is the most miraculous instrument and the most miraculous possibility in our life, has also become such a misery manufacturing machine? Every kind of misery that human beings are going through is manufactured in their minds. Unable to bear the mental torture, people have invented various kinds of deviations and perversions on this planet just to somehow deal with the mess of the mind. These perversions might give them temporary relief, but after some time the perversions only multiply the mess. They do not really take it away. Your mind, that which should have been a ladder to the divine, has unfortunately become a stairway to hell, simply because it is too identified with so many things. Once it gets identified, your perception becomes distorted, and this distortion permeates every aspect of your life. People keep telling me, Sadhguru, for you the biggest thing in your life just happened unasked. Maybe you are chosen. How will it happen to us? It is not a question of anyone choosing anything for you. It is just that if you keep your intellect unidentified from anything, starting from your body, if you do not even look at yourself as a man or a woman, if you do not identify with your family, your qualifications, your society, your caste, creed, community, nation, or whatever million other identifications that you take on in your life, every human being will naturally lead himself on to his ultimate nature. If we have to experience the circus of the mind as a miraculously coordinated activity rather than as a mess, the most important and crucial thing is that your intellect is not identified with anything. There is no other way. The intellect is like a scalpel which is constantly cutting through everything. Your ability to discriminate between one thing and the other is purely because of your intellect. You can make a distinction between the floor and the chair only because your intellect is functioning. You know that you must come through the door, not through the wall, only because your intellect is functioning. Without the activity of the intellect, you cannot discriminate. If a knife has to cut through anything effortlessly and well, it is extremely important that whatever it cuts through does not stick to it. If the residue keeps sticking to the knife, after some time this knife becomes useless. Some of you must have experienced in your kitchens, when you cut an onion with a knife, and then cut mangoes or apples, everything tastes like an onion. Once the residue of what you cut through sticks to the knife, in many ways that knife becomes more of a nuisance than a help. Or in other words, once your intellect identifies with something or the other, it gets chained with the identifications. Once this happens, you have a completely distorted experience of the mind. Once your intellect gets identified with something, then you get all messed up. This identity is not on one level, it is on many levels. Because of this complex system of identifications, you are in a complex mess. I must share this with you. I hope it is received with the necessary understanding, because this is about a certain moment of intimacy. I grew up in such a way that right from my childhood, I could remember things that happened when I was just 2 or 3 months of age. It just did not allow me to be like a normal child. I thought like an adult. Because of this, no one could take me on their lap or fondle me or carry me. Even though my brother and sister, who are older than me, were used to being carried and fondled, somehow it was difficult to do those things to me. I always preferred to walk alone and do my own things. My mother was a very devout and dedicated woman. For her, her whole life was her husband and 4 children. She never thought about herself. She just gave her life to us. So there was no need for her to ever express, "I love you," or anything. Such a thing was never expected. Whether she loved us or not was never a question that occurred in anyone's mind because her whole life was for us. I developed a kind of relationship with her where though I was the youngest in the family, I was like her elder brother in many ways. She would share things with me that she would not share with anyone else. And when I took advantage of that and joked, she would always say, "Oh, why am I sharing this with you?" On a certain day when I was just 14 years of age, because of some interaction, somehow she grew a little tender and expressed her love to me. She was not necessarily saying, "I love you," but somehow she expressed it. For me, it was very matter of fact. I just asked her, if I was born in the next house, would you still feel like this about me? It hurt her very much. She broke down and went away. I did not intend to hurt her. I just asked a simple question. These questions were constantly going on in me about everything, not just about one thing. And after some time she came, tears still in her eyes, fell at my feet and went away. I felt that was good for her, some kind of realization happened within her. I am saying this because our ways of thinking and feeling are so deeply identified with things we are associated with, our body, our parentage, our children, our wife, our husband, our home, with just about anything and everything. My grandfather used to always eat from a gold-rimmed plate. He was a rich and very proud man. Even when he traveled, another gold plate had to travel with him. Suppose the plate was not there, he just would not eat. The same damn food, what is the problem whether you eat from a gold plate or a steel plate? Okay, so you want to do things in style. But the identification with something as simple as that is so deep that if he ate from another plate, he would become sick. His stomach would be disturbed. Your identifications are so very deep with big things and small things. Once you are identified like this, your mind is a mess of a circus. It will never rise to any great peak, it will just be a mess. Once you are very deeply identified, it is better not to insult the circus by calling your mind a circus. It is more of mental diarrhea, because it is just going on non-stop, endlessly. This cannot be stopped with a pill. People have tried drinks, drugs, and all kinds of things, but it cannot be stopped that way. Only when you get disidentified, when you are able to be involved but not entangled, only then it can stop. Your mind need not be controlled, your mind needs to be liberated. Mind is not a cap on life, mind is a way to liberate life. Nowadays, everywhere you go, people are saying, you must control the mind. Your mind does not need to be controlled, your mind needs to be liberated. But unfortunately, people always think of controlling the mind. People are talking about wanting to be no mind. It is a very misunderstood concept. It took millions of years to evolve this mind. Why do you want to become no mind now? It is simply because you are not able to handle the torture of your mind. If your mind was ecstasy, if your mind was the means to your blissfulness, would you want to become a no mind? Only because it has become a mess, and you are seeing it as a barrier, not a stepping stone. You want to become a no mind. Mind is not a barrier, it is a tremendous possibility. It is because we are trying to go about handling the mind without addressing and understanding its fundamental nature that this problem has happened. Morality is the major problem. One of the biggest problems is, right from one's childhood, what is right and what is wrong has been imposed on the mind. People have taught you what is good and what is bad. But good and bad are very, very strong points of identity. You naturally get identified with whatever you consider good, and you are naturally repelled from whatever you consider bad. Having an aversion to something and an attraction towards something else is the basis of identification. Whatever you are averse to dominates your mind. The nature of your mind is such that if you say, I do not want something, only that thing keeps happening in your mind. There is no subtraction or division in the mind, there is only addition and multiplication. You cannot take away anything by force from the mind. This does not need any enlightenment to be understood. If you just close your eyes for a minute and look at it, you can see that you cannot do anything by force in the mind. If someone tells you, this is good and that is evil, but do not think about the evil, that is a full-time job. Nothing else but that will be going on in the mind. The moment you label something as good and something else as bad, you getting identified with the good and having aversion to the bad is a natural process. It is because people realize that identification is causing so much trouble that they immediately started giving you an antidote, detachment. The moment you detach yourself, your ability to experience life is also gone. Where there is no involvement, there is no life. Life cannot be experienced unless there is involvement. The deeper the involvement, the deeper the experience of life. However small the event may be, however small a piece of life may be, if you are deeply involved, it is a great experience for you. Nothing dramatic or spectacular needs to happen in your life. If you are deeply involved with the simplest aspect of your life, you will see every aspect of your life is spectacular. But why is so much detachment being taught everywhere? It is because of the fear of entanglement. It is from this fear that detachment is always being propagated. If you detach yourself from life, you are avoiding life. You are here to experience life, not to avoid life. Can you experience life unless you are involved? No. But right now there is a fear of entanglement. If I involve myself, maybe I will get entangled. Entanglement has happened because of the discriminatory nature of your involvement. Your involvement is coming from a certain identification. I am involved with this person because this is my wife. This is my husband, this is my child, this is my home. It is the identification which is causing entanglement, not the involvement. If your involvement is beyond your identifications, you will see that involvement brings absolute joy to life. If your involvement is indiscriminate, you would simply be involved with all life around you in just the same way, with the very air that you breathe, with the very land that you stand on. Involvement enhances life in a tremendous way. If life is not enhanced within you, all the higher possibilities of life will also never happen to you. In the process of becoming spiritual or trying to be spiritual, a lot of people have become like goats because if you practice how not to be involved with life, you will slowly become more lifeless. You will become less of life as days go by, too much of mind and very little of life. As life recedes in you, you will see nothing fantastic can ever happen. Only if life is happening exuberantly within, can it carry you to higher possibilities. Your aliveness is going down because you are committing suicide in installments. Involvement need not necessarily mean that you have to go and do something. You can just look at people and be involved. You can look at the sky and be involved. You can look at every life and be involved. You can close your eyes and still be involved. Involvement is not an act, it is a certain willingness towards life. You have become willing to the process of life. If you get identified, you are becoming unwilling to the process of life. You are only willing in selection. You are not willing with the rest of life. It is this unwillingness which is scaling down the aliveness in a human being. Just look at yourself and see, when you were 5 years of age how alive you were and today how alive you are. Your aliveness has gone down, hasn't it? Really gone down. With age our physical capabilities may go down, but aliveness need not go down. Even if you are 100 years old, you can be as alive as a child. Your aliveness is going down because you are committing suicide in installments by becoming selective in your involvement. Whatever you do willingly, that is your heaven. Whatever you do unwillingly, that is your hell. What is considered so beautiful can become so horrible. What is a great love affair, becomes rape if it happens to you when you are unwilling. The difference is just willingness and unwillingness. If you take away the willingness, the process of life naturally becomes a suffering. Whether your mind is a misery or your mind is a miracle simply depends on whether you are allowing life to happen to you absolutely willingly or unwillingly. Is your life a love affair or is life just raping you? That is the question. If you are being raped by life, then the mind is a misery. If your life has become a love affair, then life is blissfulness, and the mind too is blissfulness. If the circus of the mind has to become a symphony and rise to its crescendo, you cannot be selectively involved. In the circus, the trapeze bars and trapeze ropes are always tied in such a way that the trapeze artists will get to reach each other only if they go full swing. If any one of them is a little unwilling, the circus will collapse. They must go all out, otherwise it cannot happen in a beautiful way. That is so with you also. Are you going all out with life? If you are going all out, that itself will settle the mind. The passion with which you look at your lover or your child, with the same passion, look at the sky, the trees, the earth, or anything. If you have the same passion and involvement with every aspect of your life, the mind is not a misery. It is a beautiful circus. Circus is not a negative word. A circus is a hugely coordinated symphony of actions. And that is how the brain is functioning. The accumulated mass of information is what we generally refer to as the mind. And its activity comes from that very information. This information has a basis beyond your birth. From the moment you were born to this moment, everything that you have seen, heard, smelled, tasted, touched, everything that you have perceived through the 5 sense organs is recorded in your mind. Whether you consciously recorded this, whether it happened in wakefulness or sleep, it is still recorded. This can be very easily checked. Suppose you are fast asleep and someone says something to you. If we do certain processes, you will see that what you heard in sleep is still there, and you can very easily repeat it. These things have been done as experiments in hypnotized conditions. But in the yogic system, we have always been aware of this. In India, we always knew that the best time to put the best input into a human being is when he is in the mother's womb. So, elaborate care was taken about how a pregnant woman should be, in what kind of atmosphere she should be, and under what kind of influence she should and should not come. She was not even allowed to meet certain people. Only those people who were most loving, wise, and intelligent were allowed to meet her. She was not exposed to any kind of negative emotions or negative situations because that is the time when you can teach the child which is in deep sleep and just forming. Because there is such a sense of deep sleep. It is very easy to teach. When a person is awake, there are any number of distractions. While you are being taught, you are aware of the body, you are scratching your body, looking around, and doing this and that. But when you are asleep, all these things are absent. Your absorption is absolute. So everything that you have heard, seen, smelled, tasted and touched, in wakefulness or in sleep, is recorded. This information is there. How harmoniously we use this information reflects the effectiveness of the mind. Or, how much of a mess this information becomes depends on the ineffectiveness or the mess of the mind. To organize this, people have done various things. All kinds of methods and exercises are being tried out in the world. Yes, there are many ways to make minor corrections and make yourself a little more effective than before, but if you really want to unleash the mind, not control the mind, if you truly want to unleash the power of the mind, the fundamental thing is, your intellect should not be identified with anything. Then your perception comes to such clarity that the mind naturally organizes itself, no one has to organize the mind. Only because the perception is so distorted, its function and its outcome are also distorted. Once you liberate your mind from being identified with anything, then mind is a miracle, mind is a spectacular circus, not a mess. In South India, there was a king called Krishnadevraya. He had a jester, Tenali Ramankrishna. One day, the royal barber was giving Krishnadevraya a haircut. A crow came and sat there and started making its usual caw-caw sounds. The barber stopped the haircut and with arrested attention, started listening to the crow. Krishnadevraya looked at him and said, "What is this? You are listening to the crow as if you can understand what the crow is saying." He said, "Wait, your majesty, wait." He has a message, and very carefully listened for a long time. Then he shook his head. Krishnadevraya became very curious. "What is this? You understand crows?" "Yes." "What is he saying?" "Your Majesty, this crow has come as the messenger of your forefathers from heaven. What he is saying is that they are in heaven, but uncared for. Everything is physically taken care of. But there is no one to entertain them. They are really longing for some help from you. That is why they have sent this crow as a messenger. We must send someone to heaven to entertain your forefathers. How can we leave them not entertained like that?" Krishnadevraya immediately became very emotional. "My forefathers are bored and suffering because of a lack of attention and entertainment? I must send the best entertainment. Let us see who is the best dancer, the best musician, the best." Then a few other courtiers arrived and each of them said, "Oh, your Majesty, I am willing to go, but I can't sing for nuts. But if you want me to go and serve your forefathers, I will go to heaven and serve right now." Like this they built it up. But then they said, "No, for your forefathers we must send the best of the best. How can we send a musician? How long can he entertain them? If they hear him for 2 days, they will be finished with him. If you send a dancer, how long will she entertain them? If you see her for a few days, you are done. We must send someone who can keep them continuously entertained. Who better than Tenali Ramakrishna? He can keep your forefathers entertained forever because he is so ingenious. He is the best person. Krishnadevaraya also agreed that there was no one like Tenali Ramakrishna. He is the best entertainer. I would not like to part with him, but my forefathers. He was feeling very emotional. He said, yes, we will send Tenali Ramakrishna. Tenali Ramakrishna was called, and he heard the story of how he should go to heaven to serve the forefathers. Immediately, he put on the same act, "Oh, Your Majesty, I am more than willing. This is such an honor. I am going. I know the whole process of how to go." The barber had also received instructions on how to send the man to heaven. The crow had instructed him. The barber said, "You must make the man sit facing south, and then you must get lots of sandalwood, camphor, and ghee. The heap should rise well above a full-grown elephant. It should be only sandalwood, pure ghee, and camphor. Keep the man inside this whole heap and then set fire to it. This fire should burn for a minimum of 3 days, and then the man will evaporate and go to heaven and serve the forefathers." Tenali Ramakrishna said, "This is the correct method. This is the best way. I will go and serve your forefathers. But let me make the preparation. I want to purify my body, my mind and everything before I go there. I want to take off all the doshas one in me. Give me just 30 days' time." A grand site was prepared. Tenali Ramakrishna personally went and supervised the whole process and set up the whole thing with his trusted labor. Krishnadevaraya was moved by Tenali Ramakrishna's dedication towards his forefathers, and his willingness to go to heaven. The appointed day came and Tenali Ramakrishna went into a haystack first. Over the haystack, this whole hill of wood, ghee, and camphor was built and set on fire. It was kept burning for 3 days. After 3 days, nothing but ashes were left. Tenali Ramakrishna had disappeared. Many months passed. Krishnadevaraya wondered what was happening to his forefathers because the damn crow did not come again to tell them what was happening. Every day when the crow came, he asked the barber, "What is he saying? What is he saying?" But the barber said, "This is not that crow. This is just an ordinary crow, not the messenger crow." After 8 months, one day when Krishnadevaraya was in the full assembly of the court, Tenali Rama arrived with long hair and a long beard. He bowed down to Krishnadevaraya. Krishnadevaraya was overjoyed that Tenali Rama had come back from heaven and said, "What is happening? Are my forefathers well? Did you keep them happy?" "I kept them very happy. They have been splitting their sides with my jokes. They are really enjoying everything. It is just that they have one problem, Your Majesty." "What is that?" Tenali Ramakrishna said, "There are no barbers in heaven. Look at me, even I could not have a shave. And for your forefathers it has been so many years that they are tripping over their own beards. It has become so difficult that they are carrying long beards around their necks and are really having a problem. They need a good barber. We must send them the best barber in the land. Of course, the best one is the royal one." Krishnadevaraya immediately said, "I will send my personal barber." The barber quaked. He fell at Krishnadevaraya's feet and admitted everything. Once you are identified with something, your perception gets so distorted. From the day you were born, to increase your identity with your family, your parents have been campaigning that you belong to them. To increase your loyalty to your community, caste, creed and religion, other people have been campaigning. To increase your loyalty to your country, some other people are campaigning. On different levels, people are constantly campaigning to ensure that you are deeply identified with something, so that you will serve those purposes. I want you to know, a campaign can be run to make you believe just about anything. If we campaign hard enough, we can make you worship anything, hate anything, love anything, and give up your life for anything. We just have to work on your identifications. How strong your identity is, and how far you are willing to go. People get so identified because of these campaigns and everything gets distorted. No one wants you to be a liberated human being because they are afraid of freedom. They believe that if someone is free, he may do irresponsible things. If someone is truly free, why would he do anything irresponsible or harmful? Someone does irresponsible things only because he is not free. He is not free in his mind, he is too identified with himself and nothing else. That is why he can harm somebody else. If he is not identified even with himself, no harm can come out of such a human being. It is this distinction which has unfortunately been misinterpreted as non-attachment or detachment. Detachment does not mean that you detach yourself from your family or the people and life around you. Detaching yourself from your family is very easy. When they become inconvenient, you can detach yourself. That is not detachment. Detachment means you have disentangled yourself from the process that you call body, and from the process that you call mind, because both these things are accumulations from outside. The body is something that you gathered. It is an accumulation of the food that you have eaten, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Similarly, what you call as my mind is also an accumulation. All the impressions that you received through the 5 sense organs became the mind. Whatever you accumulate can be yours, but it can never be you. If there are these 2 sets of accumulations, naturally there must be something more fundamental than these within you. The whole system and technology of yoga is not a teaching, a philosophy, a belief system, or a religion. It is a whole technology to go beyond the limitations of your accumulations and experience that dimension which is fundamental to these accumulations. What we offer as inner engineering too is fundamentally just this. If you go into these processes, there will be a distinct separation between what is you, your body, and your mind. Once this little space between you and the activity of the mind and body arises, the mind is no longer a mess. It is a great symphony. It is a tremendous possibility that can take you to great heights. One defect or blemish specifically refers to defects in the physical, mental or energy bodies. End of part 1. Please like and subscribe to the channel for supporting our work. You can donate to us with the PayPal account in description box. Please support Isha Foundation and Sadhguru work to save soil, education and uplifting Dharma by buying the book in full on Amazon. Thanks and happy yoga.